Hi, I'm Zac Poor, and you are listening to Pour Me a Cup, a bold and refreshing podcast fueled by good coffee and unfiltered conversations. After more than a decade in the music industry, I've spent countless hours in studios and small cafes chatting to artists about their unique and inspiring journeys. The intention behind this podcast is to spotlight those intimate conversations in hopes to encourage and inspire our next generation of creators. So grab a mug, post up, and join me in my virtual cafe. This is Pour Me a Cup. Enjoy. Okay, so now in your bottom left, I think you can unmute yourself. I'm unmuted. Let's see. Let me check your chat. Can you hear me right now?
So confused.
Oh, now I can hear her.
Hello? Oh, now I can hear you. Yeah.
So you can hear me okay? Is it clear?
Yeah.
Today, on our very first episode of Pour Me a Cup, I'm sitting down for a virtual coffee chat with Aria Award-winning, X Factor alum, singer, songwriter, actress, and one of my best friends for over a decade, Australia's own Samantha Jade. I mean,
yeah,
who would have
really
ever
clear.
thought? I actually haven't seen your
Hey,
your new place.
This is my bedroom, and it's actually really nice. The light's nicer up here.
But you guys are in the same neighborhood still.
Better. But yeah, it's down the road. It's so nice. You'd love it. When they came to move us, literally like for about 5 minutes, we're like, oh, really? They were so angry because it was literally,
oh my gosh,
like
we
were like, funny. Just there, literally a walk. Love it.
Oh, I love that area.
Yeah. I'll give you a little information on this area actually that we changed mind. So last night, Pat and I read a stat that where I live in Sydney, which is one of its beautiful area, is the second highest area for coronavirus.
How?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem, thinking back, that it was like a super busy area. Yeah.
No, it's
a small suburb,
but everyone's old and rich. Right. So I feel like everyone's old and people refuse to, because they're rich and old. Right. They're like, I'm going to do what I do. Nothing can stop me. And if I do go out and get a coffee, everyone's 75 years old. And I'm like, you should be home. I can drop you one. We wear like gloves and we've got masks on and they're just in their little outfits. Their Sunday best. It's
I feel
so
like
bad.
It's like that in our area a little bit at the beginning. In the last week and a half, it started to every grocery store. And I think we talked about this a little bit in text or DM or WhatsApp, one of the many places we communicate. But I think we had talked about just that distance at a grocery store, like where they're actually taping it out on the ground. And you're seeing a lot more like kind of best practices. And so I appreciate that. And I think they aren't letting anyone, at least here, in without a mask now. So it's really going to take everyone. So it's one of those things where you're just like, so many people were participating just on board right off the bat.
I think Australia too is behind in cases. And so, and we're a little late to the party because we're Australian and we're just like, whatever, it's fine. Yeah. I think it was a viral photo that went around of Bondi Beach. Like everyone was this was a few weeks ago, on Bondi Beach like it was nothing. And then they shut all the beaches because of it. That was 2 weeks ago. And I would say now it's I think people are scared. I think it's really hit home for a lot of people. And I think maybe what's happened is someone knows someone. It becomes that. Yeah. And then what becomes personal to you is when you usually start really taking precautions. And I think that's happened.
I hate that with so many things. And I think for so many years we've, there's been terrible things happening in so many places of the world for so long. And, now it's a global pandemic and we're still waiting till there's 1 degree of separation for us to take stuff seriously. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, if we're watching the news and we're really following this, it's like the minute you started to see that horrific death toll rising, isn't that enough? And then for us in the States, it was kind of the same. Like, I mean, still last week, there was so many people in more of the Midwest and southern states that just were not taking it seriously, even though you're watching the news come out of New York. And in LA was, taking it very seriously. At that point, our governor and mayor were just like really cracking down. But
I think it is that thing of until it affects you personally. And I think that, that's in, like you said, other things in the world. And I know for me personally, it was the cancer thing. I was like, I'd heard so much about it, but when it affected my family, immediately I was like, oh, wow, this is a
Right.
whole thing.
Yeah.
This is a life-changing experience. And I think that's what's happening with this. Because I think a lot of the media as well is very frightening. But then there's all those other stories that are like, oh, it was fine. I had it. It was a
Right.
cold. It passed. That. But there are cases that I've heard about that are, younger people that have been really affected by it. And also, so what that you're 30 and it might just affect you like that? If you touch something,
Right.
then your grandma might get affected by it. It's such a, I guess it just shows you how selfish a lot of the generation is.
I know. And what's interesting, and we were kind of talking about this last week, but there's a lot of double messaging going on and contradictory messaging going on. And I even think
Yeah.
back to, even over the last couple of years, and I've definitely been part of this, just kind of that self-care journey of people that
Yeah.
for a long time didn't kind of put ourselves first. And I know you've experienced this so much, employing so many people. I think you're constantly kind of putting other people's needs before yourself. And I don't want to say people pleaser, but definitely
Bit of a yes person.
bit of a sure.
Sure, I can do it. Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things where then over the last couple of years has been this big kind of self-care movement, and it's been good to be selfish, put your needs first, but then you enter this, and all of a sudden it's kind of like you're in this kind of mind place.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you are being asked to give and follow directions, and it's really outside of your comfort zone, and this sphere of kind of comfort that you have kind of built around you, I guess, is crumbling, and you had nothing to do with it. It feels like, and everything's changing.
Totally.
It's really
you're
interesting.
Right, actually. That has been such a thing. Self-care Saturdays, self-care Sundays. I need to look into myself. I need to do about me.
Yeah.
And that is really great because that's a huge part of life, doing the work.
Right.
But I feel like it is a mindset that we should be in now.
Nice. How are the boys and how's Kev? Are they all in the house together?
Yeah, but they're good. It's just, I had the first kind of, because I was supposed to, as you know, I always go home, and I was so upset because I had that planned I haven't seen my family since Christmas. So I had that planned. So that sucked. And I guess it's the not knowing when it's going to end. Like not end, but these rules, I guess, are going to be
right. When you see them kind of the restrictions become lighter, and then we start to kind of pull back. And I think I was listening to this thing earlier today of just, is it ever going to go back to normal? And of course, like so many things when it comes to this virus, we're dealing with it as it comes and as information comes out and unfolds. And because this is kind of unprecedented times, I think we don't know what happens after the ripple effect kind of starts to smoothen out, and we don't know what life looks like afterwards. And I think a few of my moments when it comes to thinking about that, I'm just kind of like, oh man, like I hear new normal a lot when people are talking about this new normal. And I'm like, oh, of course you're always striving and you're wanting to, do things. We all have grievances and stuff along the way, but you're kind of like, I liked my normal before. So I'm really curious.
Yeah.
And this being about coffee, we were just saying it's been probably 5 weeks since we've got a takeaway coffee, which there's so many worse things happening for so many people. But you go down just the list of your normal things that kind of, fill your cup and restore you. And there's those little moments, and all of those were wiped away so quickly. And even just going and getting coffee with a friend, like that's gone, that little bit of kind of an age.
And that's because it is such a normal thing that and I guess that's one of the lessons that I'll definitely take is the small things. And I know, you say it all the time, and especially if something big happens to you, or you lose someone, or you go through something, you're always like, I'm going to take every day, I'm never going to take it for granted. I'm going to, live every day like it's my last, But I do think that everyone's got a little bit of that in this, as in, oh my gosh, when am I going to go? For me, shopping's a big deal. When am I going to go to the Bondi Junction?
Many shopping adventures with this one. Yeah.
I mean, when I feel sad, I'm like, I'm going to buy a new outfit and everything's going to be fine. No, but that is a thing for me, and it's a pick me up. Yeah, go have a coffee with a friend, or even, like Jules has her kids. We can't go to the park. We usually, we'll walk down to the park, and her kids can run around. It's just like little things like that that you just can't do. That's such a strange thing because it is so normal.
Right.
So it's really ripped, all the normal out. But I do think a new normal, I will say, I was thinking about it the other day. If it goes back, when it goes back, a part of me would be like, oh, 'cause I've found comfort in
Right.
this time,
Yeah.
and I've found comfort in the kind of, and you know me, I'm a bit of a creature of habit. So I'm like, oh, now I'm kind of used to this. And Pat goes and gets my little coffees in the morning, or he makes me one, and I'm quite liking that. And, you know, we watch our little TV shows every night, and there
Right.
are little things
There's a
that
lot of
are
quality
really
time you're getting to spend with your partner. And
quality time.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking about so many
Yeah.
parents that are, home with their kids so much right now. We've got incredible working parents out there that are just
Yeah.
working all the time. All of a sudden they're home with their children, and you just think like,
Yeah.
man, they're really getting to spend a lot of quality time with them. I know for my brother and sister-in-law,
Yeah.
how much they work, and there's still like
Yes.
those parents that are involved in absolutely everything,
Right.
but they're really there. Like,
Everything. Yeah.
obviously there's so many things going on, and so many are tough and can be negative, but there are those positives. And I think a lot of people are trying to do that reframe and trying to focus
Yeah.
on those, that beautiful quality time you can now spend with your fiance, and you guys can cook together, and a lot of those
Yeah.
things that you
Yeah, that's what I've been trying to do. Instead of
Mm.
freaking myself out and watching Contagion over and over, I've been trying to,
I logged in for
keep
2
it.
seconds and thought about it, and I was like, "Nope, seen it. I know how that ends. I'm not doing." I was like, "That
I
makes it
know.
happen."
I watched it and then immediately checked Gwyneth Paltrow's Instagram, and she put a photo up in a
I
mask saying,
saw
"I've been
that.
in this movie," and I was like, "Oh, I love her so much."
Yeah.
I mean, what is Goop doing right now? They're definitely making something to get rid of this.
Oh, true.
But I just think that that's the thing. I was like, I'm going to focus on that. Be like, Pat and I, we are such workers. If I'm coming home from the studio or he's coming from work, we'll just be like, oh, let's just go out and eat, which is great. But we're taking the time, to cook together, and
Right.
perfected my dad's curry, and, little things like that we wouldn't do. Date night at home, board games. Yeah. That's nice. And I think that can be the beauty in it is,
Right.
Closeness that we probably wouldn't give each other the time for.
Right. How are you finding the not working? Or someone that I know, at least when I was there, you were traveling 3 or 4 times a week, sometimes more than that. So as somebody who's used to flying and traveling all the time, at least as far as I know, like how has that been slowing down and not doing that, and kind of not having that kind of call sheet in a sense of every day that you have to do?
Yeah, the call sheets, I miss those. Never thought I'd say that.
Like, you have something to do today, and someone's doing your makeup. You're like, what?
Totally. What? I do miss it. For me, it's the not traveling is tough because, like, that was my life on a plane.
Yeah.
And, I had it so down, my routine, because usually every weekend I'd have I'd have a show. So I would just have my little bag and have it pretty much packed with my costume, and get up an hour earlier, go to the airport, go have my little food in the lounge, like, that little routine.
Yeah.
That's weird. It's really, really weird not traveling. It's the worst part for me is not being able to spark that creativity. What you get in the studio is what I get singing live.
Yeah.
And I think that I like not singing. I sing all the time. So, that's really, really hard. I've just downloaded Acapella, the app.
Okay. I change keys sometimes when we're doing acapella, so it's not for me. Like, where's my
note? You just go and sing lead.
You sing every time.
You're better at lead anyway. You are. No, you're good at lead.
You're the one who taught me harmonies. You taught me harmonies and riffs. Yeah, I just didn't grow up on that. So I remember especially when we were in the Valley, that's when I really started to be like, how do you do those fast things with your because I could belt, but I couldn't really.
Yeah, it's such a funny thing to think of, because I just think about Woodland Hills, that apartment, and I would get up and just be like, so if I was auditioning for a show, and then I would sing maybe 7 songs, and you would just sit there and watch me.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And then you had the tall, like, vaulted ceilings, and I was like, this sounds amazing.
I just can't get over used to watch. I think about it just sitting there and just.
I loved those days.
Do it again.
I'm like, do you want to do it with the hair up this time? Are you going to wear your hair down? Should we be like, is this a proper dress rehearsal? Sure. We had a lot of fun there. It's one of those things where when you're in it, it's always in hindsight, but when you're in it, we were we were struggling. So I don't even think we knew financially how much we were struggling. But
we really didn't.
I think
that was a time.
I feel like I would go back and be like, get a job, get another job. So I would just be like, work.
Yeah.
And we were doing all these sessions and we had our pub deals, but it was this just kind of weird thing where we were just kind of like, well, that's what you worked so hard for, right? You worked to get that. And then you're kind of in the studio and you have all this time and no money.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of like, yeah, I mean, we were still just, I don't know what we did.
I really think about that often. What did we do all day? I mean, I know a lot of it was me singing to you, but that's mostly at night.
And photo shoots, day, it's where we learned how to do photo shoots. I'm like,
that's where I learned makeup.
I'm a photographer. I don't know.
I mean, but you're that person that's weirdly good at everything.
No.
You are. You will never admit that, but he is for people listening. But I just remember not being not even thinking, because you know how now we're so health conscious and I'm like collagen in my coffee smoothies and running and working out and, a little late for that, sweetie. Like, where were you 10 years ago? We did not care.
We both were approaching our 30s and we were just like, what are we supposed to do? Because we haven't been doing it. What are all these 20-year-olds doing? Because I didn't do that. It was just like red vines. I had a diet of red vines for probably 6 years. Red vines and coffee, clearly.
Yeah. And hot Cheetos.
Like, would you touch a hot Cheeto now? I would not touch a hot Cheeto.
Oh, no, I would definitely touch one. I would. But I would not tell anybody.
I wouldn't admit it on a podcast, sweetie. Yeah.
No, sweetie. Please. So good, though.
Oh,
so good.
Yeah.
I miss American food. I never thought I'd say that. Yeah. I really do.
Well,
I miss
and you were in LA as well, and then you got to go to New York. So you went to these hubs of actually where, New York's always had amazing food. And we went in February, and it was one of those things where it was kind of slowly, we were there for Valentine's Day. So it's one of those things where I was kind of like looking back and I'm like, because it feels like ages that we've been in the house,
totally
with this virus, but I was like, damn, we were in New York. Like,
oh my gosh.
I was like a month ago, like when we were chatting about it.
You're lucky you're okay.
Yeah, we went all over the place. I mean, it's New York. It's
wow.
And by the way, for people listening,
for my viewers,
for my viewers, with this podcast, this is exactly how it is, right? When you go to get coffee and you're catching up with a friend, it literally goes from left to right, to back in the day, till right now, till the future, to tears, to laughter, to all of it. So that's the charm of this. It's coffee and scattered conversation.
Real. Yeah, it's real. This is what we would want.
This is truly what it's like. But I was just thinking of New York, and I was thinking about how we were all just there. I mean, really, was it last fall?
I thought you were going to say, let me just backtrack there, talk about scattered conversation. I thought you were going to say, I was in New York and I thought about how we got hit on by two swingers, is what I thought you were going to go to. Because that did happen.
Was that the last time we were there? That was the time before. We went two times very close.
We go every year.
Oh, it seems like forever ago that I've been hit on. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, that was
I literally talk about that trip, and I always, what I'm remembering from it is that like secret martini bar that was it Grand Central Station or Union Station?
Yes, Grand Central Station. Yeah, and we'd just been listening to my favorite Sam Cooke, which I listen to like all the time, and remember it was that song. Drop back your bow. And
when we sat down at the bar, that was crazy.
And that bartender starts singing, Cupid, back your bow. And I was like, what? And in that moment, we got into, of course, we go from, oh my gosh, so how are you? Oh my gosh. So like 2 seconds, I'm crying when I see Zac every single time. And we went into that zone. It was like,
yes. Oh, yes.
Remember?
That's what and I think about, I always think that martini bar on that trip, and then forget about the swingers night, which is that random couple that tried to come on to us the first night. And listen, we were bored, so we sat there and chatted to them. They were wasted.
Oh my gosh.
I would love to see them at some point and just be like, yeah, you didn't get it for about the first 40 minutes.
for about the first 40 minutes, and he kept going, so what are you guys doing after this? And I was like, well, I don't know, probably just going to get some pizza. And Zac's like, he just looks at this guy and says, no, we're not doing that. And I'm thinking, pizza? Yes, we are. Like, it's New York. And he's like, just be quiet for once in your life. Be quiet. And you knew, and I didn't. And it was just the funniest New York Carrie Bradshaw Sex in the City.
It was such a Sex in the City moment.
That is an episode.
Yes, but you were not the Samantha in this case. You were very much the Carrie or even a Charlotte in that moment.
Or the Charlotte, yeah.
Just really
I was
not
Charlotte.
I do remember starting off that trip because what's interesting, I think, with us and so many of my close friends is we're very like in-person people. So we kind of, I mean, we tag each other and stuff in Instagram DMs, and we kind of communicate probably more so DM than texting. We're not like big FaceTimers, and we're not constantly sending videos back and forth and texting. It's one of those things where if I have exciting news or you have exciting news, if it's something that's going to happen before I see you, of course, we'll tell each other. But if we haven't, we kind of hold back. I really want to talk about, exactly. We're just spewing out all the things. But that
everything
trip was definitely started by, we're like, so anyways, and tears just fell at 7 a.m.
Oh my. Wow. That was a lot. But I remember that trip. So that trip was winter, in the middle of winter. The Martini Bar trip.
I'm really concentrating on this dog that just keeps barking outside.
Oh, I can't. That's another thing. I really want to get a puppy.
Oh, you see all the pictures and all the videos of everybody with their adorable dogs. I want a dog and I want a baby.
Oh, I know.
Little cheeks.
I know.
I desperately wish I was babysitting Bella or Aiden when this all went down, so they would have had to stay with me.
Had to stay with you, yeah.
Can you imagine?
I know.
Like they can't leave now, so.
Yeah, they have to stay. Well, I've actually been looking online and just sending little links to Pat because it's my birthday next week. I keep saying, I hope my present barks. So let's see what happens. So we'll see.
How are you taking your coffee at home now? Do you just drink it black now? Listen, you're real health inspiration. I see you working out every day. Well, I know normally, do you still do a latte? Do you still do 2 sugars, 1 sugar?
I do no sugar in my coffee. Yeah, I've kind of, I mean, I love my chocolate, but I've gone off sugar in coffee or even white wine, straight to alcohol. White wine, I can't do anymore. It's too sweet.
Wow. What are you drinking?
Sugary drinks, I can't do. I like red. Oh my gosh. I knew.
Welcome.
I remember you saying to me,
thank you for joining us.
You'll get here one day. I'm here.
I never liked white wine. It was one of those things. But I mean, I was like you with coffee. I think most people, when they enter kind of the coffee drinking zone, it's one of those things where we're having like these blended frappuccinos.
Yes.
Like Brittany got with whipped cream and all that.
Cream.
So because it's like your taste buds change, and also, your metabolism changes. So you can't drink 1,000 calorie drinks for breakfast anymore.
But, I remember living in London, and there was a Starbucks, because Australian coffee, as you know, is so good.
It's the best.
So good. I mean, even
once you
the
have
bad
it, it's
coffee.
so hard to go. I lived in Sydney for almost 2 years with Sammi. And when I got introduced to good coffee, it was one of those things where I'm just like, at the studio, I would have 7-Eleven coffee. I didn't care.
Yeah.
When you grow up with zero standard of truly, that's what Listen now.
I know.
Liked it. Know better. But I think once I had, is it Nookie? Was that the coffee place that was right by the place in Surreal? I feel like once I really got used to having just like a really great coffee in America, because it's so shit, you get these large coffees, a whole bunch of stuff in it, and then it just tastes like, cream tastes good, sugar tastes good, so vanilla flavoring tastes good. So
it's like a cake.
Yeah. Luckily in LA, there's like such a good like wave of great coffee places now.
Well, yeah, because I grew up in Australia and then moved to LA when I was 16, and I was very new to the coffee game. But my mum, so I actually probably didn't come from drinking Australian coffee, because I only really started drinking it at 16 to not stunt my growth, which didn't happen. Didn't really help. I should have drank it since I was 12. But but my mum, remember, she used to make it with the press. Like French press. She was like, I cannot do American coffee. And she used to
Yeah.
go get these beans from some place in Santa Monica. We had to drive there to get these beans. They were there were all these different flavors, and I didn't get it. And I was like, oh, Mum. And I would say to her, like, just put the vanilla creamer in there.
Yeah,
Because,
like
like,
the
I
coffee
loved,
mate. Mm-hmm.
yeah, the coffee mate, which I still love when I come there. And it reminds me of going to Montana in those massive
I
cups at your mum's house.
know.
Reminds me
Every
of that.
time I go home, I want that all of a sudden. It's so weird. It's like
Yeah,
I
it's a
immediately
comfort.
want hazelnut or French vanilla poured in my coffee. I
French
don't do it. I'm
vanilla.
not
Oh,
crazy, but yeah,
no, because
so
it's a
good.
thing. Like, yeah. But so my mum used to get the French press. And so then I got used to that
Right.
coffee. And then I would come back, obviously. And now that I was a coffee drinker, I'd come back home just to visit because I lived in LA for 7, 8 years. Come back to visit and then get coffee here and be like, oh my gosh, what? This is not my Starbucks vanilla latte that I get. And then when I moved back here, I was like, the sweetness thing really changed because of my age. And then I
Right.
moved to London when I was 28, I think I was. In every city, I Googled Australian coffee,
Yeah.
Australian coffee Rome, Australian coffee London, just because it was just so good.
Yeah.
But I used to go get my little, because Starbucks is a comfort thing as well. And there was one on the street that I lived on in London. And I'd go there every day and I'd get a some kind of frappuccino thing or like a hot, because it was so cold, thing. But I'd actually get them to add some whipped cream on the top.
Just to make
Yeah.
it taste better. Yeah.
Just because I was, looking for something. And then I realized that my jeans that had fit me since I was 15 no longer fit. And I was like, so strange. I wonder why I'm putting so much weight on in London. Maybe it's the 3 dollops of cream you're having every day in your coffee. Like, you don't realize what it's doing to you.
How could something so light and airy just pack it on like that?
Yeah. And if you're on keto, which I was, but then I'd go to the fridge because you're allowed.
I
You're
blame
allowed on.
keto for everything. Truly, I blame.
Blame keto. Because
Truly.
I remember texting my brother and I was like, you're not going to recognize me. And I would do all my Skype like this with these kind of jumpers. And I was like, Tej, like, what do I do? And he was like, get on keto. Like, it's the best thing ever. He like got it because he had been through some weight stuff himself. And he was like, get on keto. So I
You
did keto, but
guys.
I Googled that keto says you can have whipped cream. So I didn't realize that going into the fridge and going with the whipped cream thing as dessert
I feel like
is
you
not.
told me a story once about you and Pat doing that. You had lost your damn minds. Your
We
guys'
love
stories
it.
about London, well, and traveling are
Oh,
hilarious. The things you guys have been through. You guys have such
oh,
like a defeated look on your face when you talk about London. And London's amazing when we
London's
visit.
amazing.
Oh, I remember sitting in, I think it
Oh,
was
yeah.
maybe Katana or something when you were in town. Kind of a nice place, you're just like trying to be cool. And I was howling like a hyena, literally tears coming down my face. Your guys' stories about London were ridiculous. And you and
Oh,
Pat both have such a good
yeah.
sense of humor with being so self-deprecating and just like
Yeah.
the stories
Oh,
are
yeah.
hilarious.
Well, because it was just like I think we had both been there on holiday. We'd gone, you and I had gone, and my
Yeah, yeah.
family. That was the first time we had all been. And then Pat and I had been on holiday, and we were like obsessed with it because I think it's one of those places you get obsessed with. And so we
Yeah.
were obsessed. We were like, London, oh my gosh. And I always had this thing with London. I think maybe it's because my mum was Scottish. And so she used to speak about Scotland and London when I was a child. And I think
Yeah.
that maybe sat in my mind as some kind of comfort. And I remember
Right.
my grandfather used to watch English TV shows when I was little. And there was something about it that was comforting to me. And so I made it up in my mind that it was a sign that I needed to live there one
Of
day.
course.
And
So many
so
signs.
I mean, they're everywhere. And then when we did move there, I mean, our place was absolutely beautiful, and it's an amazing city. There's so much to do and so much
It's
going on.
beautiful.
But unfortunately, to do those things, you need friends. And I didn't have any of those. So it was just me and Pat. Me and Pat
And Pat had
in
a
this
new
apartment.
job, so he was working
And Pat had a new
constantly and
job.
having to
Yeah.
kind of, when you have a new job and
Yeah.
you're just having to really be there extra, do all the
Yeah. And he
dinners and
was
all the stuff, and you're like,
working.
no, thanks. I'll
Yeah,
stay home.
exactly. Yeah. And he was having to really put in the work.
Of
And
course, yeah.
I was just home, and I remember nearly every day, because Pretty Little Thing is a clothes
Yes.
website that you buy clothes on, and so that's all I did, because they deliver the same day there. Yeah, and Misguided.
That you couldn't wear anywhere.
That I couldn't wear. Where was I wearing this stuff? And these were before the days as well of like ring lights and stuff. I should have done that then. I'd be a makeup person.
Truly.
But I didn't know that. So all I would do was order clothes and eat Nando's.
Yeah, which is,
tough time. Yeah, and then Pat would come home and
time.
I sound like an absolute brat. But I had been working so much. And I think I went back into that thing of when I got dropped in LA. Although I wasn't dropped, I felt like I was. And I just was like, oh no, here I go again, just sitting on the couch. But I don't have Zac to do it with me. So I was alone.
Like, you like to sing still, bitch? Get up and do a show.
Do your audition. I've already done that audition in real life, so I couldn't do it anymore.
Truly.
But yeah, London it's a beautiful place. It's an amazing place, but it's not, I don't feel like it's easy to live in.
I've actually not been back to London since we were there. I've been back to Paris from different times ago, and I was there a little bit longer, I think, this time. But I actually have not been back to London since we went there. I feel like last time I was there, I was able to do things that were a little bit left of maybe because when you go the first time, you see kind of all the
big yeah.
We still did a lot of tourist stuff the second time too, and I was working when I was there too, so it was kind of fitting in these windows. Right. So but we still, I really wanted to go to a museum, and I was so tired after shooting. I literally we were at the museum, and I'm blanking on what the museum was, but I've never had this happen, but I was falling asleep while standing, looking at art. I literally was like, I was literally like trying to, and when you've had 50 coffees in a day, it's doing the reverse thing at that point. And so I had one more.
They're not doing anything.
Nothing. And there was
you are the person of all the people that can stay awake. I'm like, Zac, I'm really tired, and then in 2 seconds I'm out. Yeah. Whereas you will just stay awake. You will just make yourself stay awake. Whereas I'm like, I love you and everything, but like, I'm done. Whereas you're not like that at all. You will stay.
I feel like maybe it was a mix of jet lag. I feel like if we had been there for a long time, and the jet lag kind of hits you the third or fourth day, it was that weird third day, literally half asleep the entire day. And maybe slept like 2 hours the night before as well, because we had so much stuff to get done. But I also was trying to like make it a boot trip, so we were doing a lot of fun stuff too, but I was literally falling asleep at the museum. I was like, I just want to go to a museum, and like we can we build it up,
of course. And when you think of Paris,
blah, blah, blah. I did have a lot of croissants when I was there. I broke dietary rules when I was there, but we had such a good time. Like, I was on a high from that trip for a really long time. I think after that,
Paris is magical. It's romantic, and it's everything that you think it's going to be. I just think it's so beautiful, and it's such a place where I remember Pat and I were there, and it was a really nice warm day. It's just one of those places where you can just keep walking and discovering new things, and it's just beautiful. And I think it's very different, like for Americans and for Australians, it's very different, like cobblestone streets everywhere, and that European vibe is something I think we really associate with movies. And I love to think I'm in a movie all the time. And that's how I feel in Paris. Oh, I love it. I love it.
I think the idea of traveling and stuff was always one of those things that I was so excited to explore as I got older. Like, I couldn't wait to grow up and be able to kind of travel. And even to loop back to the coronavirus, I've been thinking a lot about what traveling is going to be like too for us when this kind of lets up and people are traveling and stuff again. Yeah. I don't know. It's really interesting.
Well, Pat and I had planned that because we didn't do much travel last year, because he traveled for work and I traveled for work in the beginning of the year, because obviously I did the writing trip. And then we went to New York, but he couldn't come. So we didn't do a trip together. And we were really, really excited to do that this July. Like, we'd kind of planned it, and we were trying to get married this year. We're not sure if it's going to happen now. We were going to do our honeymoon almost before our wedding, because we wanted to do Europe, and Europe is nice in summer.
Right.
And obviously we've had to let go of the whole trip. So it's a sad thing, and it's also a thing of, like you said, it's just so available to us.
Right.
And I think that that's something we'll definitely not take for granted. When you go, oh, we should go somewhere. Yes, go
Absolutely.
see places, go travel, go learn things, go, be amongst other cultures. And it's something I really miss, because I love to travel. And every year I've gone to New York, and every year I try and go somewhere international.
Right.
So that's going to be a bit strange.
Yeah. In regards to your guys' planning of the wedding, I mean, we've seen it with friends here as well. I mean, for you guys, has the planning kind of halted for right now? I can't imagine trying to connect to venues, and there's so many moving parts that I don't even understand. It's such an intricate thing. But
we actually went to see the venue this year, and then we kind of put in a bit of a date, and it's going to be the smallest wedding of all time. But we, kind of got excited about it. And I think especially for a girl, like, the excitement that you dream of since you're small, and all of the little things. And I got quite into being like, okay, I'm gonna plan my wedding. Like, oh my gosh. And I kind of became like okay with it, because I think for me it's a lot without my mom, and I kind of started like going through those motions, and that's a deep place. And then nobody's working, so obviously can't go have dress fittings and kind of suit fittings, and we can't go try the food, and we can't go see the flowers. And my family, obviously being in Perth, like they won't be able to fly over. So we're kind of right now going, it's a uneasy time, because we don't want to kind of say, oh no, it's not happening, because what about if, with some miracle it can happen?
Of course, yeah.
But then Pat as well was like, do you really want to get married in the year of like the coronavirus? Like, it's such a dark year.
Yeah.
And I was like, actually, that's a thought too, because I think everybody will think back to this year as that.
And
so we've actually
people be so present too in that day, and you being able to be present. It's one of those things where I feel like for a second, you might not even be able to really fully focus that day, because you're thinking every single one of your loved ones is in one place. And of course, even if we're being told that everything's fine, there's so many things we've been told. I mean, sometimes a half a day later, it's the complete opposite of what we've just been told. So I can imagine that's a lot of stress, planning one, and then also being there. You're like not able to be present in that moment. I know in those moments, you're so good at being present in those moments. And so it's one of those things where that day is about that. And you want it to be, about love, and about, this amazing time marrying this awesome man that you love. But not being able to focus on that fully, because you've got so many people traveling, or even just people coming with that kind of unnerving feeling about being in a crowded place and stuff. And I can imagine that's so stressful.
That's right. And also the conversation being like, how crazy, oh my gosh, so it's just all going to be that. And we just, we don't want it to be about that. So, so we're thinking next year. Yeah. And we're big on dates. So, we're going to think about revisiting it. Yeah, we're actually lucky we're not those crazy people that are like, it has to be now.
Well, you guys have been so chill.
With the wedding, we're kind of, we feel like we're married anyways, but I want my day. My day? I want my day. I want our day. But yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, there was a few things that I had kind of written down that it's always so funny when we're in a group of people, especially other creatives, and we start talking about memory lane. I think it's one of those things where sometimes when I do these kind of songwriting panels, I forget. I think because when you're in the struggle of really going after your dream, and you're in the struggle of just, being able to afford really the bare minimum, I sometimes just forget about those kind of key moments that were just crazy, but we just kept going, right? So we were talking a little bit about our valley days.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Oh my gosh, those times.
Yes.
I wanted to chat to you a bit about, because you mentioned the kind of dropping scenario earlier, which was really just you deciding to part ways with your label. But for a lot of the creatives listening, I really find it interesting, the tenacity that so many artists have, and so many people, I think,
Yeah.
when this overnight success idea, where when it's finally kind of going, it's moving, um,
Mm-hmm.
at least the visibility wise for the public to see, it's been a grind. It's been moving in one way
Oh,
or the other for the artist for such a long time. I definitely was one of those people. When I met you, I wasn't fully in the industry. So I wanted to be a singer.
yeah.
I was kind of
Yeah.
fresh from Montana, and I was in college a little bit, and I was working quite a lot, and I wanted to get in, but I really did not know how to kind of do it. You know, you're like, well, I want to sing and I'd like to record my song and I'd like to do this, and this,
Yeah.
but kind of
Had an
navigating
idea.
that. It's an idea,
Yeah.
it's a fantasy, it's a
Yeah.
dream still. And I think when I met you, you know, you were kind of maybe at the tail end of making your record,
Yeah.
and there was some tension between you and your label. I think it was about 3 years into your deal, 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
And the music was amazing, and you guys had put so much time and travel and money, and family
Mm-hmm.
moved over, and I know you've talked about this in you know, a lot of the X Factor kind of behind the scenes stuff, but just that
Yeah.
idea of looking back on that moment, and you know, now that you have been able to really live out your dream, but looking back
Yeah.
and kind of talking about that first kind of heartbreak about music. I mean, there's a time you enter, but there's
Oh,
also a moment where your dreams feel like they get really just crushed for a second, and kind of
yeah.
how that felt for you, and then also how you decided to keep going.
Do you know what's so funny? So that time, I wish that I would have understood how big it was. The things I was doing, you know, the people I was working with,
Yeah.
like, but it's all I knew at that
Right.
point.
Yeah.
And so, because I had been, you know, plucked out of Australia to LA and then signed to the biggest pop label, like, it was crazy.
Right.
And I had, you know, gone straight into these massive rooms, and not that I'd gone straight into these massive rooms. I had worked before that, but some of my first experiences were really, really big. I remember that time I got the call to go to the AMAs, like,
Yeah.
you know, and I went to that. Remember, I went to that gifting suite. They sent me to the gifting suite, and I went with Adrian Barlone from who I love. I watch her on The Real now.
Oh yeah, Cheetah Girl.
From 3LW, so the Cheetah Girls.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we went together and we walked through and just got all this stuff. And then they were like, all right, we'll see you at the AMAs tomorrow. And I was like, cool. And it was just such a, like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Now I think about that, I'm like, oh my God. But it was one big thing after the other. And weirdly, that
Right.
became the norm. And not that my parents were ever like, well, you're a big star now, like, do whatever you want. Like, I started to unload the dishwasher, and I was my brother's French teacher at home because they were doing homeschool, even though I didn't speak French. That's why they're not fluent now. But I still was doing those things. I remember the day that I did get the call, and I was with you.
Yeah.
And we were about to drive to Vegas for our friend Dalian's 21st birthday. And I remember I got a call. We're in downtown LA.
Like the downtown library or something. Oh, I can see it.
Yes. And I was in the back, and I
Yeah.
got the call, and my management at the time were like, we're going to leave the label because we're going to jump straight into another deal, and they're never going to put you out because, you know, there's always going to be Britney, and there was all that stuff. And
Right.
And I just, of course, I was 20 years old, saw them as, you know, people that I looked up to.
And trusted, yeah.
And trusted. And I was like, okay, is that happening, or are we going to? And they were like, that's what we're doing. We've done it. Like, we've done it. We've made the call. And I remember well, first of all, I didn't want to make it about that because it was our friend's 21st birthday. Right. So I knew we had like that 3-hour drive or whatever ahead of us.
Right.
And so we just kind of talked it out through the drive, and it didn't hit me at all.
Mm-mm.
We were just like singing Britney Spears still, and, you know, singing Leona Lewis. And I just didn't even think about what it actually meant until a few days later.
Mm-hmm.
I think because we were, you know, doing something so fun, and then we just were like, oh, okay. And then when I came back and I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. I felt like such a failure. I was 20 years old, and
Which
I felt
is
like
so
I
crazy.
was a failure.
But that kind of goes to the point of working, because the thing is, sure, you were plucked out of obscurity in a sense from Australia, but you had been working to get to the point of being discovered to be plucked out of obscurity. So there's still this work ethic that was going on.
Yes.
And then you get to LA, and the
Yes.
minute you step down, it is nonstop, nonstop, nonstop. And these are the days where, a lot of people don't, at least in the industry, understand those days. There was this long process of kind of getting yourself ready to be this kind of perfect pop star. Only then were you able to shop a deal. You didn't even have a deal at that point. So many of us didn't have deals, but we were sitting there refining and refining and refining just to be good enough to walk in and then be completely broken down and then rebuilt up in this kind of new, lab that is the record label. So it's really interesting. But I also think too, back to that day, and I think, in hindsight, and also just wisdom, getting older, and just kind of the temperature has changed a lot in the industry about also artists having a voice in their own careers, in the decisions that take place. I think back to, even them calling and saying, I think we're going to do this. I think we're going to do this. And then you're like, okay. And they're like, well, it's done.
Yeah.
These are grown ass men making this decision for a 20-year-old girl who has also moved over her entire family, and you're all working and interconnected, and and then that pressure at a younger age to kind of be delivering. And I think that's part of it, is you never came up for air because you were working. And it wasn't unheard of back there to leave a situation and move into a new situation. But it was one of those things where it was a changing time in the industry. So jumping right in,
the feeling of like, because you go from a bit of a comfort of being like, oh, I'm signed to label, and I've got my A&R, and I've got my little team, and we had, my song was Timbaland, Ryan Tedder, and me. That was my single. And we were going to film the video, and I had the whole album. I had actually gotten all the track listing of the record. It was finished, ready to go, and then just to be like, no, not happening anymore. And the problem as well is that I believed so much in my management at that time, because I was so young and naive and completely believed in them. Very wrong. Wrong.
So many of us have made
that. Yeah, exactly. And I really just believed that I was just going to walk in and I was just going to get another deal. And I think that, looking back, that's where my struggle started. It was actually then. It never picked back up. It never, ever picked back up. It was just like...
Because that was at 20. Really, then the process between 20 and, I guess you moved back to Australia when you were 25. Is that right? You shot some movies in between there. You still worked and did vocal work, and you were still putting together records and constantly creating. We spent a lot of time in the studio. But too, we've watched it with each other, both with losing deals, but we've watched the spark kind of fall out of each other's eyes, or at least out of just that ambition. Because you do get to a point where, and I watched it with you, that's 5 years to have music kind of not come out. There was still gate holders. Like it's not like now. You can't, TuneCore was not there. You couldn't just jump on and put up a song if you wanted to. And also the part about being with a team that does have some control. I mean, we've seen it with some of our biggest, stars as well, is so many of them still can't put out music, even with all of these avenues that are out, because they're in these kind of old, archaic deals.
That's what I was in. And I also, I didn't, you think about now with social media, that wasn't a thing. So we had MySpace. I think about now, and people would probably just jump on their social media and be like, oh my gosh, like I've lost my deal. And people would then jump on, and you'd be able to still sing online and people could see. We didn't have that. That wasn't an option. So it was like going through it all, and then you feel like one of those artists that's just kind of been forgotten about, and I feel like there was a pile of us. There was me, Nikki Flores, Casey Brown, I think Jojo was kind of at the same. We're all kind of similar time,
right?
And I remember it was all like we all were like whalers, with brown long hair. It was kind of a similar thing, and then we kind of all got the same.
Yeah, I think that kind of JoJo story that has started to come out, it's so interesting to hear her talk about it now, which is identical to how we were hearing it go in the industry. I mean, you hear whispers, and there's kind of where there's smoke, there's fire, but you would hear these stories and you would just have so much empathy, such a climb for her. And I always say it's interesting to have a reference point now like that. If you've seen the JoJo story, that's happened to so
So many
and
people.
whether it's songwriters or
And she's
producers or
able to
artists.
put that out there. Like,
Yeah.
that was the thing, is I looked like I just went missing
Yeah. Totally.
because I
Like gave
didn't
up.
have the option of Instagram,
Right.
TikTok, Twitter. You couldn't
Right.
update your status, and you know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
that is such a huge, huge thing now. We know the story from the artist now,
Yep.
because the artist has the freedom to speak. Back
But she
then,
didn't
we
for
thought we weren't
so many
allowed to.
years.
She was silenced for such a long time. That's right. And I feel like I went through the same thing in the way of, like, I just didn't say anything because everyone just assumed I got dropped too, which was tough. And now I even say it sometimes because I'm
It's
so
the
used to that
easiest.
story.
It's same. It's the
Yeah,
easiest kind of,
it's
and you know what? That's what it feels like. That's what it
that's
feels
what it
like. It
feels
feels
like.
like you were
Exactly.
dropped, forgotten, abandoned. That is how it feels. And to be honest with you, even if it's reframed in a positive way at the beginning, when you start to build that resistance with your team and you start to ask questions, that's the word that's
Yeah.
said back to you. All of a sudden it's like, well, if they wanted you so bad, they would have kept you. So it becomes really toxic and abusive. It's
so much. And you take it all on because you are already vulnerable. You're already beyond insecure, just low down place. And so and these people have power over you because they've built it up.
right. Yeah.
And so as soon as you start asking questions, it's like, well, maybe you didn't perform well enough, maybe you weren't singing well enough, were you working out, maybe your hair wasn't exciting enough, maybe you weren't.
So insane.
And you believe it. And you know this, I believed it for not for a second, for a while, where it was like, oh my gosh, it was me. It was me.
Right.
And it took me so long to actually go, actually, no, hold on a second. You guys are doing some shonky stuff. Don't get me wrong. There were things I probably could have done better. It's never, one way, but hang on a second. You guys are completely playing on my insecurities, and it's emotional abuse. But it takes you so long because you're pushed down to such a place that you're not allowed to think for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing. It really is.
Yeah, I think the first time I had witnessed it and watched you go through it, but also for me watching it back when you had moved back to Australia to get like a day-to-day job and just be there and just kind of living a very different life to what you were living before. And to be doing something completely different, not singing, not writing, not creating. So to go back there and then to kind of have the courage to finally audition for X Factor, that was a big leap for you. That was a big chance that you took.
When I left LA to come home properly, because I remember I used to come back and I used to kind of still sing on Glee, and then I would save that money, and then I would kind of try and put that in my bank account to still pay my rent in LA. But then I would come back to Australia, work with my dad, and save that money for the plane ticket to go back. And I, at the time, was paying, to get out of a deal. So there was lawyer fees. I remember when I properly left and I had a meeting with someone in the industry, and he had, really buttered me up, and I was like, oh my gosh. And it was, 5 years later. It was 5 years later. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this might be it. And then he said, but your tone, it's not memorable. You don't have a star tone. Like, I'm sure you can sing really, really well. And I know you can sing really well. And, you're up there with the great singers. But I don't, if I heard you on the radio, would I know it's you? And for me, that was it. That was the day I was like, I'm done. I'm going home. Because after building myself up to go to that meeting, even, after battles in your own head and, all of that. And and we had gone to, I'll never forget it. Getting emotional. No, not going there. We had gone to H&M, and you had picked me up, and I had literally no money. You gave me a little card and you gave me $100. I'll never forget it. And you were like, oh my God. And you were like,
here it goes.
let's buy you a new outfit. And I was like, okay. And I just remember we bought a whole outfit for $100.
And it looked good.
Wow. Great outfit.
It was H&M's version of Chanel.
Exactly. Then that day I remember getting into the car and I was like, I'm done. That's it. That's all I had.
Oh,
all I had.
yeah.
And I was like, I'm moving home. And then I moved home. And then, it was basically the X Factor. And I remember even that was, I mean, that audition, again, with the no money and my people helping me out, my dad had called me and said, I was like, Dad, I need like a necklace or something on my chest because I get stress rashes so
Right.
easily.
Yeah.
And he had put money in my account to go to Diva and buy a necklace, which I ended up having a line at Diva
I
afterwards.
know, man.
So weird.
So awesome.
But yeah,
Within a year too. It's like within a year of that
within a year.
audition, you had a sold out line at the store where you literally couldn't even afford to get a necklace.
It's crazy to think about like those, because I rarely deep dive into those moments. It is good to sometimes take you back there though.
I think it is because we once again kind of get caught up in this kind of constant rat race, this wheel that is the industry that is not reality. And there's kind of no rhyme or reason to a lot of it. We do live within that space. And so in order to get music out and be able to work and do what you love doing, it's hard to figure out how to navigate it. And so I think being in that boat of like always getting ready for the next this might be it moment. And then moving back home and having and I don't even think really you had been in it so long that you didn't have that this might be it excitement. It was more of like,
no,
I'll try this. It was kind of, you were defeated. And I think watching that performance back and watching the kind of sizzle reel thing they kind of do before you go on stage, I was so emotional and so moved because obviously it being on the screen, there's like a little bit of a separation, but I had watched you try and try and try and try and try and work so hard. And then, and so to get back up there and try again, I was like, damn. And then, the history is what it is, bottom 2, 3 times, I mean, most in the show's history.
It's just this constant like, but I mean,
it's definitely not vertical, right? The climb, it doesn't go like this, and there's a couple steps forward, one back, multiple steps back. There's a regression sometimes. And what I'm trying to get to, and I think we've talked about this a lot, at least in our past trips, is of course that resistance. We've chosen to let it refine us instead of kind of defeat us. Of course, we come up against resistance, and the intention is for us to get better and learn healthy ways and better ways for us to own our own work and be able to have confidence again. Because I know both of us, our confidence was through the ground. Oh my God. Like at one point
we had none.
There was none. There was no sense of, and I think too, I think a lot of that was just armor that was built up. I think we were very kind of porous and open as creators and writers. We kind of let it all fall in. We let the ridicule and the judgment pour in so we could get better. But at one point it became really nasty. And so we just kind of had to be like, I don't feel anything. Meh. Yeah.
It's so interesting, right, to look back, because now I sit here, it's like I'm 33 and I, have a beautiful home and I have like a fiance and I'm, my life, it's just a totally different place.
Right.
But I'm so glad, and I know I would not have said this at the time, but it is insane, those moments, how they are seeds to your life. It's insane because up until I lost my mum, I thought that was the hardest thing in the entire world.
Right.
And then I went through that and I was like, oh my gosh, well, this is actually,
well, that perspective shift.
It's preparing you. Something is prepared. And I do believe that they say that, God, he only gives you things that he knows you can handle. And I definitely believe that, because I do think that some other people in my life, or friends that haven't been through things, or artists that have just literally made it, and just haven't been through the struggle, because there are those stories too.
Of course.
I think that maybe they couldn't have dealt with it, so I do feel like those things happen to me because I am the person that they should have happened to. I do believe that now. I mean, God, it's taken me a lot and I still have my days, but I do. It's been a lot, but I'm grateful that I now know when I go into a hard situation, I know how to break it down.
Yeah.
And how I work in those situations and what I need to do to get through them.
Right. I mean, you were in the kind of crux of, I know when the X Factor stuff happened, and then you were immediately in the, it's kind of like, cool, I've got my second mountain that I'm on in regards to my career, and I'm
Yeah.
going to never, and
Yeah.
you didn't, and you still to this day, I've never watched you complain or take anything for granted when it comes to music, because you got that
Yeah.
second chance, and you know, I've always watched you just work your ass off and on video shoots and photo shoots and, you know, touring, all that stuff, and you're in it, you know, this is what I wanted to
Yeah.
do, and kind of get to this pinnacle in that first year. And then you had a lot of the stuff with the past manager come in, and, you know, all while
Oh.
the X Factor celebratory time is happening, you're dealing with these managers from America that are just kind of being crazy, and
Oh yeah.
this
Oh yeah.
perspective shift that happens when you're like, okay, you're fighting that battle, you're putting out music, super grateful, and then all of a sudden your mom gets sick.
I'll never forget it. I was shooting a Westfield campaign in Westfield.
Yeah.
I mean, me being a shopper, that's one of the
The
biggest
dream.
things, that I was the face of the Westfield.
So crazy.
That's what I was
Oh,
shooting,
what a win.
which is like, yeah. And the day I shot that campaign was the day I found out my mum had cancer. I'll never forget it. And you were there, and
Yeah.
I had to lie. Remember, it was the flat lay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was lying in the most awkward position, these flat lay shoots where they'd put all the bags and the makeup around you and then you lie there. Remember, Ray Morris was the makeup artist, and she had to come in and literally, like, because I just was crying.
She was so
the
amazing
whole
that day.
She was amazing. She was amazing.
Right.
And then me and TJ got on the next plane. It's crazy.
And at that
It was
point, you
crazy.
didn't know the severity. I think, you know, it
No.
was kind of one of those calls, and just knowing your mom and how optimistic she was, and also just how healthy she was. She was like, she's
Yeah.
the best, but she was
Yeah.
always the one telling us about the new kind of health craze going on, and like, you should be
Yeah.
taking this.
Yeah.
Like literally everything she said, we're like, okay, that's what
Okay.
we're doing.
We'll
You
do.
know, it's like, yeah,
Goji berries and almonds. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Goji
Yeah.
berries. Totally.
Yeah.
She taught me about those.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where you didn't really know the severity, but of course, such a shock.
Yeah.
Because I was in Australia, I hadn't fully done, I was just like traveling back and forth, and I was doing like a couple months at a time, really just to kind of feel out if I wanted to make that move. Because I had left my situation at Universal, and I was super not happy in the
Yes.
music industry, and I wanted to pivot, and I wanted to maybe do the photography stuff or styling. I had assisted
Yeah.
Jules on some stuff, and just being in Australia with
Yeah.
all of you guys was that felt really comforting to me. And I think I visited there during
Yeah.
the X Factor days and spent a lot of time going back
Yeah.
and forth, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll just give this a try. And I wasn't able to properly
Yeah.
work there, so I was just kind of hanging out and trying to kind of,
Yeah.
you know, heal my wounds, I guess. And
Yeah.
to be there and just kind of shadowing and just kind of around my friends was amazing. And but it was one of those things where I always go home for Christmas, especially then. I
Every
always
year.
was,
Yeah.
me and you are such like family Christmas.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
just, it was so interesting. The closer and closer it got, I was just like, I don't know, I just don't feel like going back. And I
Yeah, which is
love my
weird for
family,
you.
like, so weird.
Yes. Oh
But
yeah.
something was keeping
Of
me there,
course.
and I think we only knew in
Yeah.
hindsight what was keeping me there. But I was
Yeah.
so excited to have spent that Christmas with your mom, and
Yeah.
obviously
Isn't
having
that
an Aussie
crazy?
Christmas was amazing with your brothers and dad and everything. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
about that
Yeah.
often. I think about what kept me there, and it was, you know, a force so much bigger than we are that kept me
Then
there. But we were in Perth. We weren't even in Sydney then for the next.
it I mean, that's a whole other thing, but it was
Of
such a,
course.
because I think when people go, oh, a family member had cancer, and there's so
Right.
many different stages and so many different cancers and so many different ways of
Yep.
dealing with it. And I think because ours was so extreme, it was like she had stage 4.
Yeah.
We literally got told it was like a few weeks when they
Oh.
first told us. Then it was a few days. Then she went into a coma. Then she came out of that coma. Then the chemo worked. Then it didn't. Then she
Yeah.
went into the ICU. Like, it was just, remember, like, just this.
Oh, it was such a roller coaster. Yeah.
Yeah, and she never came home, which was one of the hardest things, is that she had to be in the hospital the whole time, and
Right.
we had to do shift work. And so it was me, TJ, Ali, my dad, and Zac, and literally shift work. So someone would stay up and just watch, so she would be alive during the night. And like, it was just such an extreme version of
Yeah.
that journey as well.
Mm-hmm.
To learn how to navigate through and understand what was happening. And
it did. It became your new normal, and what was your career and what was your life in Sydney became this kind of secondary. I mean, you lived on planes. I remember kind of retelling the story and just talking about what a journey you have been on. But when I tell your story, it's so inspiring before you get to that point. And then when that point comes, such a shock to the system. And then just how beautiful, obviously, I got to witness the beauty of you taking care of your mom, but just how much your life shifted immediately and perspective was immediately engaged. Like, it was just laser
so
focused.
Fast. Yeah.
Crazy to
and that's my dad. All right, well, this is not happening. This is not happening. What do we do? What do we do? And that's who my dad is. He's a problem solver. He's a fixer. He's like, no, we're fixing this. And watching his lead, I think it was just like my brothers and I were like, okay, well, that's the way to do it. And I feel like because I did have to travel, I taught myself to sleep on a plane. Because I would travel that 5 hours from Perth to Sydney to say do one gig, to turn back around, do the red eye, and I would teach myself to sleep because I was like, I can't be awake on this plane and not have access to my phone, because it was before the days of Wi-Fi on the plane. I remember that being one of the hardest things is just not being in constant communication, because I was there so much.
It was one of those things where you were informed literally, while the plane is taking off until you lose that connection, able to sleep, and then on the way down, just waiting for those texts to come through. It was such a time. And I think in such a life-defining, I mean, I say for myself, that was a life-defining moment, really just getting to watch that love and how much you guys cared for your mom. And so I can't even imagine. It's something that I truly always say, you can't imagine if you haven't been through it. And I witnessed it, but I didn't go through the loss of a mother. And so
I think I was only 27 and my brother was 18. My other brother was 20. Like, it was insane. It was insane. But we knew we were loved. We were lucky. God, if I didn't have you, I would not be here. I'd be in a mental institution somewhere.
Same. Same.
I don't know how to deal with myself. It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
Well, you did so well.
Yeah.
Very proud of you.
Thank you.
Of course.
Every time.
I know. That's okay. Well, it's
no more coffee left either. Too much. Yeah.
Well, I think the beautiful thing when we do talk about your mom, and I think it's always been this way, is, I mean, since her passing, it's been one of those things where we talk about the missing, but like, your mom left so many gems. It goes from tears to laughter very quickly. And just those life lessons, so many things that, in the short time that I got to know her, like, I learned so many things. And going back to the confidence thing, like, your mom single-handedly helped us get our confidence shit together, because I literally never thought positive thoughts about myself until I met Jackie and Sammi, because you guys would just boost me up, and I was like, maybe I have a good voice, or maybe not unattractive. Like, it was one of those things where so helpful.
Well, remember when she would, because I would travel sometimes, she would call me when I, at the airport. She would be like, okay, you're at Victoria's Secret yet? And I was like, yes, I'm here, Mum. And she'd make me buy something for each of the nurses. And so I would be there buying, what's that bombshell? What's in that? And I'd be like, okay, so it's lavender. And so she's like, that would be good for, and she knew them all individually, what smells they would like.
Totally.
And you're, dying. You're dying. And you're thinking about, what scent would that person like? It's just,
and all we kept thinking, we're like, how can you be thinking of these other people,
of them
right now? But it was one of those things where I didn't understand it until afterwards. I kept thinking, there's no way. There's no way I could get out of my feelings long enough to give something to somebody else. But the truth is we would now, because we've watched that, and we've watched, we've watched it done by the best.
Well, I also think she had comfort in whatever is next. And I know that's very deep, but I think that she knew something that we don't know, that she was going to be okay and we were going to be okay. And I think that she was like, I need to show my children and, my dad as well, how much I love them, so that they'll go through life knowing they're loved. And I think that that's the gift. We were loved. Like, wow.
Right.
Remember when my mum said, oh my gosh, I saw Jesus. He's so good looking. Remember that?
GQ Jesus. Gotcha.
Yeah. So he's Brad Pitt with a bit longer hair and a beard. Right.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, so funny. I'm a bit more tan. What a journey that
best.
Was.
Oh,
Yeah.
love her.
It's weird, because sometimes I literally, this is actually last week. I mean, it's April, so it's always around this time of year because it's me and my mum's birthdays. I really feel it. And I was literally sitting downstairs on Instagram and I was posting like a workout thing, right? Like so nothing, so nothing to do with anything.
Right.
And I was just editing it down and I could, every single move I could hear like, oh yeah, that's a good one. That really gets your butt. Oh, you look great there. Oh, love that. Yeah, that's a good song. It was so weird. It was like she was, and then I would like just think about things she had said and I just looked at Pat and I just started crying. It was so, and that doesn't really happen to me. It's actually something I long for a little bit, like, but it just happened and I was like, oh my God, my mum's here and it's definitely her because she's commenting on everything.
Affirmation.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you're great. You're fantastic. You're the best. You're beautiful. Love you. Funny.
That's good. That makes me happy to hear.
Weird.
Yeah. Oh, it's the best. Your mom is one of those, I could talk about her. I mean, we could share memories about her for 24 hours. It would be the longest running podcast of all time.
Yeah.
It would be the best.
Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing as much as you did. I know that's tough. And I know some days it's tougher than others to talk about it, but I appreciate you chatting about it because I know there's, especially right now, so many people going through loss. So to hear so many like joyous words talked around similar situation, it's really nice, I think, for people to hear.
Yeah, there is so much you can take from it. It takes a while to understand that, I think, and like actually see that way of it because you're so angry at the world for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think through it, you're like, oh, that was the lesson. And I think what that taught me in, and I think that we can apply to the situation we're going through now is that it's so much bigger than just this. Everything is so much bigger. There's such a bigger plan. Everything's so much more than the little situations we go through. And I think if you have faith that it's for a greater good or it's for something bigger, then you can understand what you're supposed to take from it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great point. I think it's that connectedness. And I think this is an opportunity to understand how connected we are simply for the fact that we have to stay away from each other in order for this virus to not keep spreading. Like
save each other.
Yeah, to show how much we actually are interconnected and to show how much, we do need human connection. I think it's sometimes we take it for granted. I know I do.
Absolutely.
As someone who I work from home a lot, I'm not a crowds person. I love to have dinner with my friends, but when it's past kind of 4, I start to feel a little bit overwhelmed. And just because I want to be able to have honest, authentic, I think that's something that we really learned, through the process in Perth was wanting to always be in these kind of authentic conversations. And if they're kind of down this kind of, I don't know, it's feeling a little dishonest or kind of pointless. We, for a long time, were just like, are you kidding me? Like, who has time to waste on something like this? But I think right now, we're, to your point, I think we are understanding how connected we are. And I'm hoping that one of the many great things that will come out of this tough and terrible time for many is that we will understand how connected we are and how much we are one. That grander plan and that bigger picture, we are all truly a part of it, and both our life and death are part of those things. And so if we can understand how we treat each other and how we even show up during this time, it really, really, really matters. Oh, crazy.
Wow.
Love it. Well, before our Wi-Fi disconnected us, I wanted to chat about just kind of a favorite story. I'm going to let every other guest tell theirs, but I'm going to force you to tell the one that I love. I wanted to hear the story because we were walking the other day. We're kind of trying to take walks too. We were staring at these flowers in this person's like beautiful, curated, Silver Lake yard. And and then we were like, gosh, there's so many bees. And I was like, gosh. I was like, Sammi tells the funniest bee story.
So my management at the time they knew Smokey, and that's again going back to the bubble of your life being that's what it was at the time. And so we were going over there for a barbecue, and I remember walking in, and my mum had always wanted to kind of do interior design, and she used to actually help her friends redecorate the houses.
Cute.
And so she was like, oh my gosh, what is this house? Like, it was ridiculous. And we walked in, and I'm pretty sure it was like, Gladys Knight and the Pips. It was like the Pips. Some of the Pips were there or something. It was some crazy like moment. And I just remember thinking like, what is this room? Like, why are we here? And we were just on our best behavior, trying to be the perfect guest, laughing at all the jokes, like that kind of thing. Anyway, and so he had asked me to sing.
Wow.
Like, they were all calling me Miss Australia, sing us a song. So I just was like, oh my gosh. So anyway, I sing, of course, because that's who I was back then. These days I'm like, sweetie, no. I'm you. Hey, you've always been.
Now I've always been. No, it feels inappropriate. They're like, but it's a concert. I'm like,
no, I don't want to. But it's your show, Zac. I reckon you should just do 3 songs.
There was an opener. You got enough from them.
But I was the person who sang at a drop of a hat. So I sing Amazing Grace, my go-to. They're giving me all the praise, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, they liked me. I couldn't believe it. And then afterwards they wanted to do a cheers. And so Smokey brings out these beautiful like champagne flutes, and my mum's like, oh my gosh, because she loves like glassware, and she knew the brand, of course. And she's like,
she knows where
these are whatever it was.
The reissue, she knows it all.
So she's looking at the glass and just loving it. We all do this toast, and then we take a sip. Well, I didn't take a sip. I was too young, but I had like orange juice or something. I will take a sip, and my mum sips it, and she starts going spitting. And me and my dad just look at each other like, oh my God, what is she doing? She's too comfortable. But we were thinking, I've never seen my mum spit in my life. I was like, what is she doing? And and she's going, and I'm like, what is this woman doing? And then she goes and she points to her champagne, and there is a bee. Bee in her champagne. It is in her champagne. And then she's pointing to the top of her mouth going, oh, the bee's stung me. She's just going, it's stung me. And she's like, and this little stinger is like in the top, the roof of her mouth. And my dad and I are just like, why is this happening right now? And all
like not even helping her.
No, we're like, get it together for Smokey. What are you doing? We're just like, oh my God. Anyway, so then my dad's like, are you okay? Are you all right? And then Smokey's like just looking at my mum, and she's going, I'm so sorry. Like, she's still trying to be so sorry. I'm so sorry about the bee from your garden. Anyway, and then she's fine after that. Like, she's just, she's telling the story. I mean, it just flew into my mouth, and I thought, what is this fluttering? It was a bee. I could feel the stinger. I'm so embarrassed. And she's got a little champagne. Anyway, and then so Smokey's just like, he was so sweet. He's like, are you okay? Oh my gosh. And his wife's so lovely too. Like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, of course. And he said, because I think my dad had said, she loves interior design. He goes, do you want a house tour? Like, why don't we like, lighten up the situation? It was a bit dark after that. Yeah. So my mum's gone, oh, I'd love that, and if you want to. So we go through the house, and the house is like next level. I was so young. I was like 16. I don't really remember like I would now, but it was unbelievable. And then my dad's got whiskey, and we had to take our shoes off to go into the house. So we're in the house, and we're about to go down the stairs to the bottom of the house. And I think because this house is obviously the mansion that it is, the floors are obviously polished. I mean, I'm thinking daily. And so my dad, he's about to walk down the stair, and he just starts sliding down the staircase to the very bottom. This is a mansion. this is not a normal staircase. This is a freaking
this is like
round,
Clueless.
like
This is
palatial. It's that. It's
that
that. It's also a spiral.
Oh,
so
no.
my dad is falling down my mum and my face. I'm just thinking, what are my parents on today? Like, is there something they're doing? I don't know. I was so embarrassed. And then my dad gets to the very bottom and he's got this glass in his hand. He's like, didn't spill a drop? Because he didn't.
Like,
I think he was so
man,
concerned. Yeah. He's like, I'm not going to spill. And Smokey was like, don't sue us. And the house tour ended and we never got invited back. Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, what a day. What a day.
Oh, my gosh. Well, thank you for being my first guest. This is something that we've talked about for, so long,
Years.
Probably since we were like 23 or something. I was like, I want to do this little, like, I think it was maybe a YouTube channel thing at the time or something, but I wanted to do this pour me a cup idea because having you as my first guest, you are the person I've had the most coffees with by far in my life. And then in a close second is probably my mom and sister. But we have shared so many coffees and so many, life stories together. Yes. And it's really just always fun to chat with you.
And you, coffee-wise, for Zac, for the people listening, I've never met someone that drinks so much coffee at so many times. So he would come pick me up in LA and there would never, ever, not once, not be a coffee in your drink holder. And Truly. When I say a coffee, it's either, because sometimes he'd pick me up at like 11 at night and it wouldn't even be a 7-Eleven coffee. It would be a coffee from his house in a mug.
Proper mug. Yeah.
Remember? A proper mug. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love it. It's one of those things that just kind of obviously keeps me going. But I don't know. It's just, I think it's that. Yeah. I think for me, it's really the ritual in the morning. It kind of wakes me up, but it's also just that kind of warmth and that kind of, it has become a bit of a safety blanket, which is okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to have.
Yeah. But you're so not a vice person. So if it's coffee, that's fine. I think this podcast, I remember you talking about it in Montana because I remember your mum has those big mugs.
Cozy, like homey ones. Yeah.
And the cozy corner. Oh my god!
Oh, that cafe is still popping.
And those Laffy Taffies. Oh, yes. Love it.
Well, do you have anything that you want to chat about? I know you've been putting out music this year already at the top of the year. Are you finishing up an EP, an album? Are you?
I actually what you kind of touched on before, because when that song came out this year, it was at a really weird time in Australia because of the fires. That was a really tough thing for a lot of people. I mean, I didn't experience it on a level like that, but I went to, because I work with the Salvation Army a lot, I went on a mission to see firsthand the devastation, and it was a lot. It was really, really a lot. Yeah. I'm glad I did go because the perspective was wow. But it was hard for a lot of Australians, not just because they lost their homes and they, lost everything, but the mental health side of things, you kind of forget about in those situations because there's bigger things like your house burning down, take kind of first place in those moments. But the guy I was speaking to who had lost his house said, I'm okay with that because we can rebuild. So he was really optimistic in that way. He said, but the thing is, I'm never going to be able to look at a sunset anymore. And I was like, wow. I never thought about that. And he said, so that mental health side of things is when I look at the sun, my first instinct is fear because it looks a bit like fire.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I didn't even think about that. So it's really sad for a lot of Australians that went through that. And then imagine now they're saying stay home. Where are they staying? They don't have homes. They were just starting to
that was just so back to back. And that was one of those things that I thought as it kind of started to ramp up in Australia as well. And to your point earlier, you guys have been really good about flattening the curve very quickly. I don't know if maybe that's on the heels of such a traumatic experience right before you were like, listen, we have been through this now and it was a long stretch. I mean, I think it started to become kind of international news quite late in the game. Fires were raging.
Yeah, because it's so hot here too. Like it's in summer, as you know, the heat is insane. And so it obviously doesn't help and it doesn't rain. And it was so sad for our wildlife, all our koalas and our kangaroos and
I remember
Yeah,
seeing those statistics and I was like, that has to be a typo. That's a typo, right?
yeah.
I thought it was maybe one of those things. I'm like, someone's gotten that wrong and everyone's reposting it. It's bad to ever lose even one person and one animal to
Oh, of
anything, but
course. But
that
this
number
was
was
extreme.
staggering. Yeah, millions and
It
millions.
was
I was like,
extreme.
that can't be real. And wow,
Yeah.
that was just insane. It was
Oh,
insane.
it was insane. And I think, you know, the Salvos, like I've worked with them for a long time now, and they really just wanted to be there. And I know there was some stuff written about them, but they weren't actually, the money wasn't going directly to the
Mm,
people, and that's not true. They were really helping and giving people shelter and just, you know, giving people hope. And that's what
right,
they do.
right.
And I love working with them because I've done, that was my fourth mission that I've done with them. They're just those people that you're like, I need to be better. You know, those
Well, I think
people
what's
that you
so
meet, you're
interesting
like,
with that is I think we try to, I was talking about this a couple of days ago, I think with my mom, and the idea about these kind of perfect allies that we look for in these times. And we're so quick to hear one tidbit of negative information that most often is not true. And then we tear down an entire establishment. I mean, I know you've been doing stuff, you know, with them for a really long time and you've seen it firsthand, the work that they're doing, and you
yes,
watch them interact
yes.
with people and you see it, you feel it, you see that money going into bettering people's lives, and then you hear one kind of off
Mhm.
story and everyone just comes for them. They're so quick to.
That's right.
So I'm
Totally.
glad you bring up
Yeah.
that point because I've seen it with so many, you know, charities and so many
Yeah.
reputable charities. You know,
Hmm.
one person within that charity may have done something and then we just want to tear down the entire
Oh,
establishment. And I
yeah.
think that is, we
Yeah.
need to really inform ourselves, just like we're informing ourselves of, you know, how to shop properly now and how to wash our hands and how to disinfect stuff and
Hmm.
how to take care of our
Hmm.
families. And we really need to do our research before we're reposting things because that can be very harming to an establishment that is helping
That is helping. Yeah.
millions more people than
Hmm.
this person who's doing a retweet or talking shit
Totally.
has ever done
Yeah.
in their freaking lives. So it always makes me
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
frustrated.
Can't say enough good things about what they do. It really is
Awesome.
insane. And right now they're doing so much as well, you
Yeah.
know, trying to help people and dropping off packages. And, you know, this is a tough time for a lot of people losing their jobs, losing their income. And so
Right.
they're even helping in that regard. So,
Beautiful.
yeah, so I would say for sure Salvos is pretty amazing.
Awesome. Oh, that's so good to hear. And
Yeah.
music.
Yeah, so the first song that came out this year, we kind of delayed a little bit because I didn't feel right putting out something
Yeah.
at the time of the fires.
Mhm.
It feels a little bit like that right now of, you know, it's an awkward thing to be like, go buy my song when people are losing their jobs.
Right.
So I'm trying to think of how to do it in the right way because I do think music is more relevant than ever because people
Yeah.
need something to listen to uplift them and make them happy.
Right.
So we're just trying to think of creative ways to kind of put stuff out and be true to like who I am and not wanting to sell but wanting to
Of course.
give.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, I encourage you to do whatever feels right for you. I think a lot of artists have been reaching out to each other and I've reached out to fellow artists too, just to kind of,
Yeah.
check the temperature and see what feels right. I think trusting your gut is really ultimately where you have to go. And I hadn't listened to music really in a real way probably in years, to be honest. I've
Yeah.
kind of been on that
Yeah.
podcast journey. And then also, we do it for a living. So a lot of times we listen to our old classics, but we don't really digest a lot of new music unless it's our friends. And
No, of
I think it's one
course.
of those things where for the first time, I've been really finding a lot of solace and a lot of healing in listening to music and just
Good.
kind of
Yeah.
discovering, new people's, projects that they're putting out and stuff. It's been really amazing. So whatever feels
Yeah.
right for you. There's this thing going on
Yeah.
outside which is so funny, and I'm just going to let it totally bleed into the microphone because it's amazing. But
Yeah.
at 8 o'clock, they, in honor of our healthcare workers, people kind of like on New Year's, they go out and they're banging on pots and yelling and screaming and just,
Really?
yeah. So it's this thing that has actually been this really,
Wow.
I feel like that you would normally be like, oh, what in the hell is happening outside?
But
When you
it's
hear it, it kind of,
beautiful.
yeah, it makes you smile, and it's really
That
nice.
is so nice.
It was nice talking to you, and stay safe, please, and give Pat a big hug
You
for me.
too. I will also to you. Yeah, I'll text you in about 2 seconds.
Oh,
Well, thank you for
awesome.
having me for first guest.
Yes.
I've loved every minute of this. I can't wait to listen to the rest.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it.
Love you, my friend.
Love you too. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll text you in a little bit.
Okay. Love you. Bye.
Bye. Love you. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Pour Me a Cup. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to Pour Me a Cup wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can follow us on Instagram at Pour Me a Cup. I'm Zac Poor. See you next time.